on the computer. Okay, and I'm going live. And here we are. We are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome, Ryan and Susannah from Food with Strength. So excited you guys are here. I have to kind of bogart our live stream for just a second and tell everybody about Going Beyond the Pink's newest fundraiser that just launched. You guys are not going to want to miss this one. We are doing summer scratchers and they're awesome. You guys, we've got more than 70 prizes. We've got things like Apple AirPods, we've got air fryers, we've got $100 gift cards to Amazon. I could go on and on and on. We've got the best prizes, and these raffle cards are only $10 each. You get 2 chances to win right here on the card, but there's a second chance prize that you can get by going on the website printed on the card, and you can enter to win again. So many chances to win. And the funds that we are raising with this particular fundraiser will go toward helping make sure we can do all the outreach and all the amazing stuff related to our mission in the coming fiscal year. Particularly focused on the fact that we are growing our care bag program alone by over 500%. It's bonkers and so exciting to see the impact we're having in the community. So if you're out there and you're listening or you watch this on the playback, reach out to us. There's all sorts of information on our social media about how you can get a hold of tickets, or just check out the blog on our webpage and make sure you grab some tickets from us. They are only $10 each. And again, 3 chances to win on every single purchase. All right, I'll stop bogarting, and I'm so excited about our live stream. Thank you guys for your patience with that. Yeah, so without further ado, right? You guys are amazing. I'm so glad to see you joining us again. And I can't wait to learn some more. I'll turn it over.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Kara. Thanks for the wonderful intro. Like Kara said, my name is Ryan. This is Susannah. We're both registered dietitians. We're the owners of Food with Strength. We'll go through a lot of different things right here, but if you ever have any additional questions, thoughts, maybe some things that you're dealing with personally that you want to have some advice on as in regards to your nutrition and how your health can be helped by that, just feel free to reach out to us. Go to foodwithstrength.com, click on the contact us page, and just send us any questions that you have there. But today we're going to be talking about food labels specifically.
Yep, this is a little bit my brainchild, so I'm gonna take over for Ryan. But so food labels are tricky. I think they're a really useful tool, but they can also be really overwhelming. So we're gonna talk about food labels, but I just felt like it would be really important to first get some context before we launch into just like blindly doing food label recommendations. So I'm going to come at this from a perspective of somebody who is trying to eat a well-balanced diet, which is something that I would encourage pretty much everybody to do. And so defining the terms a little bit, what is a well-balanced diet? You guys, if you've heard us talk ever, you've probably heard us harp on the fact that it's important to eat your food groups. And so that's basically what a well-balanced diet is. So the majority of your food, I will encourage to come from fruits, vegetables, lean sources of protein, whole grains or starchy vegetables, kind of our one food group. And then low fat or fat-free dairies, if you like it. And then in moderation, healthy sources of fat. That's kind of like a 6 oddball food group. But food labels are really helpful if you don't know whether or not the food that you are eating or that you'd like to eat fits neatly into one of those food group categories, and/or it's a food that you really, really like, and you're trying to determine the frequency with which you're going to eat that food. And so what I mean by that is that Ryan and I will always encourage you to think about food in balance, and we won't say that anything is off limits. So I like to categorize foods as most of the time foods. I'm going to put this on my grocery shopping list on a regular basis, versus some of the time foods, and that's only going to show up for some of the time foods are for special occasions or just less frequently. And so those usually end up being like treat treat foods, right? It's just something that you're indulging in, and it's not necessarily something that you're going to use to develop like a well-balanced diet with food groups.
Right. So for all the time foods, those are kind of things that don't necessarily have a food label. So things like when you're in the grocery store, like your fresh produce, lean meats, or like fresh cuts of meat, typically aren't going to have a label on it. And so those kind of things you want to, generally when it's coming to a meat, you want to look for something that's lean, that doesn't have a lot of fat on it. But anything that's in the fresh produce aisle over there with fruits, vegetables, all those are all the time foods.
Right, those are obvious, right? They don't come with a label. Don't worry about whether or not they come with a label. Don't worry about the calories. Don't worry about the carbs, the protein. Like, they fit nicely into a food group. You got to get that often throughout the day. So that's like a most of the time food. It's obvious it fits into a food group. Other things can be a little bit trickier, and so we've got a food demonstration today that I hopefully will help sort of demonstrate the difference between some of the obvious food group foods versus some of the trickier foods that have labels on them. Okay, so we like standards. Like, now that we've got some context, right? Like, we've got go for a well-balanced diet. Sometimes there are going to be foods that have food labels on them. How do we figure out if it fits into a food group, or if it's, determining whether or not it's most of the time food versus a some of the time food? So reading the label can help make that decision, or help you go into that decision informed and feel confident in making that decision. You don't have to commit this to memory, but because Ryan and I will put something together so that you can
we'll post it in the comments after this is over.
You've got some numbers to look at, but on the back of a food label, you find lots of information about the macronutrients that are in it. And I've got some hard stop guidelines for how to classify this as a most of the time food versus a some of the time food. So our hard stop is going to be 7 grams of total fat or less, 0 grams of saturated fat. I got to cheat and go down my food label.
Yeah.
Sodium, we want to keep to 140 milligrams or less if possible. Single digits of added sugar. So we're going to look at a food label together because there are lots of carb and sugar things, and so we'll differentiate that. Single digits, so 9 grams or less of added sugar. And then if you can, 3 or more grams of dietary fiber. So that's a lot of things, right? Like,
sorry.
Okay,
No.
Okay.
There's 2 numbers generally right next to each other, and there's like one that's really bold and has a percent, where it's not that number. There's another number that's not bold.
Yeah, we'll look at it.
That's the number we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so grams
I
and
have
milligrams.
people freak out on me when I say this.
It's confusing. It's confusing, right? It's supposed to be
Is.
It's super confusing. I will pause. I am curious. Kara, have you ever looked at a food label and like made a decision about a food? I'm taking on you because you're like the only.
Yeah, no, that's fine. There's a few live, but because we're doing it through Zoom, it's hard to say. So all of you guys that are out there live, go ahead and post too. If you actually like check out labels when you shop, or when you're cooking, or if you just kind of just do stuff. I'll tell you that in my experience, for the longest time, I didn't really bother to look at labels. I would just, make the food that I enjoyed, and that was that.
Yeah.
I think I started paying attention actually probably during treatment, because that's when I started to, really start thinking about, what I need to be feeding my body, what I don't. But I found it really overwhelming. And I like to think I'm a pretty intelligent woman. And it was still, there's so much different information out there, and it can get really frustrating to try to figure that out. I love that you guys have these like hard stops, right? Where this is, I'll never forget this now, where you said like single digits on the sugars, right? That's simple. That makes it easy to make good choices. I really appreciate that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so the thing that it can still, it's helpful, right, to have a hard cutoff. It's still kind of gray in some choices because there are several different things that have hard cuts, right? So it's going to be really challenging to find a food that meets all of those criteria. That's like pretty strict standards to hold yourself to. So, but
I'm sorry to interrupt. We've got Pat who's live with us, and she said she avoids MSG. So that's one thing that she really looks to.
Yeah, so that's further down. We're only talking about the numbers in the box. That's
and it is going to have an effect on, usually that will have an effect on like sodium levels and stuff. And so
cool.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Making decisions. by gleaning information from the food label.
Yeah.
I think Ryan, that's interesting. Ryan has a thing that he likes to look at too. He likes to look at sodium. Like he likes to look at the total milligrams of sodium. That's what he tries to keep to a minimum. I like to look at fiber. I like to look at the dietary fiber and things.
Yeah.
So it's funny the stuff that people will gravitate toward and try and like keep in the back of their mind as they're making food choices.
I think I look at like fiber and sugar the most. And trying to understand like carbs and added sugars. And now you see a lot of things with like sugar alcohols and all of that, trying to really get to really understand that stuff.
We're going to talk about that.
Oh,
we're going to
good.
talk specifically on a food label, the carbs and the sugar and the added sugar. So,
But personally, the reason why I look at sodium so much is I like hot sauce and it's really high in sodium. So I need everything else to be low. So that way it balances out. So that's kind of more right to look at sodium for those.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've had like high blood pressure folks in our family. And so I think sodium was always one of those things.
Yeah.
We always went with the lower choices on, but cool.
Yeah, we're going to have several of those in our food demonstration today.
Yeah.
Help me figure out, I lost my train of thought and I'm going to start rambling.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's not your fault. I totally did it on purpose. I wanted to, I want to hear from people if they've been looking at food labels. So definitely keep those coming.
Right. So are we looking at a food label now, or because we talked about what Kara said, so sometimes you have to be careful about your blood pressure. Sometimes people have diabetes, and sometimes medications that you're on when you're going through cancer treatment can trigger all of these things and make them fluctuate. So that's why you got to be mindful sometimes while you're going through treatment about what it is that you're taking, what you're on.
Right. Yes. So let's look at a food label because we have a couple of examples. I want to stick to like three, maybe four examples of the foods, the ingredients that we used in our food demonstration for today. So that you can see that it's nice to have those hard stops.
Sorry. Different house.
You're trying to figure out the lighting.
Love it. I love it.
It's nice to have those hard stops, but not all foods are going to fit it. So you kind of weigh out with the information that you have and the guidelines that you have, you kind of weigh out the pros and cons of everything to go forward with a decision that you feel comfortable with, right? So it's a lot of that. It's very far away from like that. Just tell me what to have, and I'll just tell me what I can and cannot have. You get to make the decisions yourself. So tell me what you're gonna do. Oh, he's gonna switch cameras. We're gonna look at a food label.
Awesome.
So there are a couple of things. I went for stuff that I knew was going to be okay. I wanted to look for things that I knew could be pitfalls for people sometimes. So we're making lazy Cowgirl Caviar. And so that has oftentimes a lot of canned foods in it, and canned foods can be healthy for you because they do fit nicely into food groups. So what Ryan is holding up is a bag of frozen black-eyed peas. That's part of our there's some really nice things on here to take a look at, right?
Okay.
So
we're going to need a little bit closer, and I'm going to stop video to hopefully make that even easier to see on the screen.
There we go. Is that focusing?
Yep, right there's good.
That's nice. Oh, pull it back a little bit. It was in focus and then it was out of focus. I'm gonna stop touching it. So the things that we had hard stops on were the total fat, right? So 7 grams or less, and you can see that this is a fat-free food. So it also has 0 grams of saturated fat, which is another hard stop. Let's do 0 grams of saturated fat. And then we start to get into some territory that can be a little bit confusing. So the next thing that I would encourage people to look at, the next thing down on the food label, I'm going to try and put my finger by it, is sodium. So this was tricky. My inclination was first to go for a canned black-eyed pea because it's easy and I don't have to do anything to prepare it. I couldn't find one that was low sodium, like reduced sodium or no salt added. And so the can that I could find had too much sodium. It didn't meet the 140 milligram criteria. So I went to the freezer section because it's going to be a little bit less processed with salt that way to preserve it. And so we're looking at, this is 0 milligrams, right?
20 milligrams.
Sorry, I can't see it as clearly. We're looking at 20
It's actually a little bit out of focus again.
Can you
if we back it off just a smidge?
Here we go. Let's just do it.
Okay.
All right. This is going to be annoying, but I'm going to read it. We'll just read it to you.
Okay.
So back to just a regular old FaceTime camera.
Here, I'll put it in the comments. Tell me what you got there.
Go right here. All right, so.
Oh,
Okay,
perfect.
you did. That's much better.
So
Yeah.
right here, sodium 20 milligrams, and we talked about the total fat is 0.5 grams.
Sorry.
As you can see right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saturated fat 0. Sodium 20. We want to keep this one at 140 or less.
That's a really huge difference between the canned and the frozen.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
So always one thing to remember when it comes to frozen versus canned is the process of canning forces them to use sodium. Like you have to use it in there to preserve. And so flash frozen, which is all frozen vegetables are flash frozen at the site that they're picked. That helps keep them and preserve the sodium amount to a smaller number.
That's wonderful.
So we had to get a little creative in the grocery store today. So we went to the frozen section to find something that was low sodium. Oftentimes you can find canned vegetables that are low sodium or no salt added, and it does make a very, very dramatic difference between just the regular canned version.
Yeah.
And so we've got an example of that later today. My favorite one, the next thing down to look at is okay, so we've got total carbohydrates and several different things that come under the total carbohydrates. My favorite one is the dietary fiber. I would encourage you to go for a most of the time food or an all of the time food, 3 grams of fiber or more.
Okay.
The next line down is sugar. This is, I feel like I'm assuming, I actually am assuming this might be kind of splitting hairs and getting really technical about the types of carbohydrate. What I'm really concerned about is the fiber and the added sugar. I'm less concerned with total sugar because you're going to find some naturally occurring sugars in produce, and that's totally fine. Right. I want to avoid stuff that's got just like added straight up sugar, table sugar, sugary stuff.
Right. Like put in there to make it taste better or
Yeah, exactly. And so that's going to be in the added sugar line. And so keep that to 9 grams or less.
Okay.
And so those I feel like are really the big items to take a look at in order to differentiate between a most of the time food or some of the time food. And this one's awesome because I think it hits all of them. Like it
really does.
Yeah, it makes the cut on all levels. So if you wanted to have black-eyed peas every single day, I'd say go for it. Visit your freezer section at Publix and have black-eyed peas every day.
Right. Please lights on.
Okay, Ryan is back to the tuning lights.
I love it. Thank you. Awesome.
Okay, so I don't know. Tell me, Kara, or Facebook world, is that helpful? Is that hurtful? Like, what kind of questions are there about the food label? Like, that's most of the time food. Have it on if you like it, put it on your grocery list weekly.
I love having that information. And for anybody who's watching us live, definitely chime in the comments if you find it useful to know those like hard stops, what we should definitely be looking for on the food labels. I do a lot of babies. I love it.
That's where you heard from.
Oh, I love it.
He really loves dietary fiber too.
Yeah, see, it's perfect.
Yeah.
But I just think it's so useful to have those numbers. I almost think like we should print out little cards and put them in our care bags or something so that everybody has that, right? Yeah. With the hard stops. Because I know, often people will do a lot of comparing one canned food to another, one bottled food to another, or something like that. But I mean, just like it's an epiphany for me to see black-eyed peas flash frozen, because when I go, I don't buy a lot of canned foods. But when I do, it's usually beans, because I don't want to have to go through the process of like the soaking and the cooking and all of that, right? I need that ease of use. Yep. But it never even dawned on me to look for them amongst the frozen vegetables, which I'm always buying. I don't get like vegetables canned very often, but.
Right, exactly.
Great. Pat said, great idea. Yeah.
Something else that I would have done if I hadn't been able to find it frozen would have been to just, if I really, really love black-eyed peas or it's something that I really absolutely have to have, but I feel super compelled to make sure that I'm making it as healthy as I can, because the only thing that really is going to stick out on a canned black-eyed pea is the sodium, right? Throw it in a colander, rinse it off. You're going to rinse it off.
That's what we do. Yeah.
So that works. Something that's nice about the black-eyed peas And some of the other things that we're going to talk about is that they do fit nicely into food groups. Like a black-eyed pea, I would say, is a starch. That's going to count as a starch.
Okay.
Your black beans is something that we're going to use. It's kind of like a protein. We've got corn, which is also a grain. We've got some bell peppers and tomatoes and onion, and like these are obviously vegetables that fit into the food group. Something that is a little less obvious, so that we can get a little bit more practice with another food label. So I'm going to stick another one in front of the camera. Is I went perusing. I got to do something that put me out of my comfort zone today. I had to find a new product.
Okay.
We were looking for kind of like a healthy-ish, nice salad dressing that would fit our criteria. And so salad dressing, I would classify, if this is oil and vinegar dressing, I would classify this as a fat. Like I would put this into a food group, and I would just say, this is a fat. Don't worry about the food label. But salad dressing is tricky because it does have extra stuff in there. And so it would be nice to know what you're doing when you're looking at a food label. And so again, not to harp on sodium, this is another good example of where you can see that obviously the fat is high because it's a fat, like that's what food group it goes into. The sodium doesn't quite meet the criteria, but it was darn close. And so that's kind of what is it? 180, right? 180 milligrams to the 140 milligrams that we would recommend. And I like this as an example of something that kind of introduces like that gray area, right? It doesn't hit like the hard stop. It's darn close. Like I'm using it in a recipe. I know it's got a healthy source of fat. It sort of fits into a food group. I'm going to use this in our recipe today. This is a good choice. And I was able to look at other dressings and say 350 milligrams of sodium. No, we're not using that in our recipe today because it's not close enough to the 140.
Right. Like, remember the other thing, we haven't really mentioned it yet, but it is dependent on the serving size, all of these numbers. Right. So like for this, the salad dressing is 2 tablespoons. For the black-eyed peas, it's going to be a larger thing, but that's kind of where the hard part comes in. Like you'll see things on a food label on the front of it that's advertising that it's got a lot of whatever. Like for example, there's a cream cheese out there that says 3 times the protein. It's a high protein, but if you flip it over, it's really only 3 grams of protein. Like cream cheese is not a protein product. Sorry, not put cream cheese in a protein category.
So it depends on the serving size.
Right, but the whole thing is like it says that it's got 3 grams of protein per serving, but it's cream cheese.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I guess we didn't talk about the serving size and the number of servings per container.
Pat was on there asking for brand. Or Pat, can you clarify? Are you asking for the brand of the cream cheese or the brand on that?
This is Newman's Own.
I was gonna say that's Newman's Own, which is great.
I was surprised. I was like, I was surprised at the brands that I would normally maybe go to. Like I wanted the Publix brand to be good because I love Publix. Right. But the Newman's Own, it takes the cake because a lot of the other ones were asked, and I had never tasted this before today. It's pretty good. Let's food demo. Let's put the recipe together. And because then I've got another product that I really, really like that is another good example of using a food label to do most of the time foods. So we're going to mix everything in this bowl. And I'm just going to tell you what I've got. I have a colander of things that I have strained. So we've got black-eyed peas, corn, no salt added. No salt added corn, right?
Got it.
And then also reduced sodium black beans. Just 15-ounce cans of each of those things. Can you guys see that?
Okay. Yep. That's perfect. And I think that's really important too, right? If we're going to be using canned products, look for those low sodium and then rinse them.
And I was on a hunt, right? The black-eyed peas, I couldn't find them, and so I was really disappointed with that. And so we resorted to the freezer section. But again, you could soak them. That's going to be no sodium. You can put them. But this is lazy Cowgirl Caviar. So
it's hot and we're busy and let's do this. I'm excited. This is exactly what I need to get me through the summer.
There was going to be no soaking today. So I have chopped up 1 orange bell pepper.
Okay.
You can pick whatever color you like. I like the orange. It looked pretty today. This is half of a pretty small red onion.
Okay.
Into the pot. See? Lazy. You just dump it. We bought a pint of grape tomatoes. I halved them. I didn't get the whole pint in like my Pyrex thing, but I would have gone for the whole pint. So
Okay.
a pint of tomatoes
Yeah,
halved.
just pretend it's a pint.
Don't you all, everybody out there in Facebook land, like, do you not love a recipe that comes together by just literally tossing stuff into a bowl and stirring it?
Dumping
Especially
it.
when it's healthful and tasty and you can feel good about eating it.
Exactly. Yeah. I would have totally done the whole pint of the tomatoes here for sure. I would have done the whole pint. So, okay. So the lazy part, really the lazy part is the salad dressing. I wanted a food label, but I also didn't want to make my own dressing. If you wanted to be super on top, if you wanted total control over the amount of healthy fat that you're putting in here, as well as sodium, you could make your own dressing for this. There are tons of recipes online, but I just picked, this dressing up from the store because I liked the sodium content and it tastes pretty good. So this is the Newman's Own classic oil and vinegar, and I'm going to shake it up. I have no idea how much I'm going to put in here. I'm just going to eyeball it in a little 1/4 cup measuring cup at first to see what it looks like.
I hear all the kids these days talking about that they're doing it by heart.
Right.
Like this is where they feel like it should be. So you just basically get a good coat on it.
Exactly. So I'm doing it. They're doing it by heart. I'm doing it by laziness.
Whatever works for us, right?
Yeah, but I just put 1/4 cup in there. I think it looks pretty good. It's pretty coated. Do you want more?
No, I think that's fine.
Brian likes it.
And fun fact, because of the beans and the corn, it's a complete protein.
It's a complete protein. It's got so much fiber. It's like my favorite thing in the whole world.
We have the complementary proteins in there with the beans and the grain from the corn.
Look how
corn is considered a grain.
Nice.
If I were not lazy, something green in here would look really nice. So like some fresh cilantro or something would be awesome, but I'm lazy.
Stuff avocado could go in there.
Yep. I am like so poor Ryan. When we do these things and we put them together, I'm so anti make a recipe. And he's like, no, we really need to make one. But the thing that's so beautiful about all this is that you don't need a recipe. You can do whatever you want. But this is what we ended up doing today.
Yeah. I kind of love it both ways. It's nice to have something a little, done up, a little extra with the recipes, but it's also really lovely, because it is reality, right? We're all going to have those times where we want to have something that's healthful and delicious, but we just don't have the time to follow a recipe, and being able to like learn from you guys and see how you can throw these things together, and it doesn't have to be full of fat and garbage and processed foods, and still, do great things for our bodies. I appreciate it a lot.
And I think even maybe a little bit of the theme for today is like being well equipped with the knowledge to make the best choices you can when it comes to things that are more processed. Because we used some fresh stuff. We definitely used probably 50% fresh things, but the thing that's nice about this is that you can make good choices on things that are convenient and sort of processed a little bit. So the items end up being decently, they're healthy. They are healthy. I put them in the all the time food category. So, okay, these things are awesome. I have to give credit to one of my previous coworkers from a job that I had when we lived in Atlanta. But these are Garden of Eaton bloom tortilla chips. I love these things. They have no salt on them, so they are tortilla chips. They have 0 grams of sodium. They have 0 milligrams of sodium. So this is one of the things.
Really?
0. This is
and they're just at the store. I don't know if I've ever seen them.
We got them at Publix. They're I feel like they're pretty widely available in places. Let me get those. But it's like perfect. It's 7 grams of total fat. I think.
I'm not gonna lie. I could sit with that bowl and a spoon and just be very happy. But if I can have a chip,
that's these are chips that you can feel good about because they don't have any salt on them. So for some, they might be an acquired taste because they're not salty. I mean, you really get the corn tortilla, no salt. They're decently low in fat. This is a good example of like one of those gray areas again, because you can see that the dietary fiber is not 3. I like the number 3. That's kind
it's a sometimes thing, but it's close. I mean, it's 2. It's close,
right?
It's close.
And it doesn't have any added sugar. It's like the right amount of fat. It's got no
you're
sodium.
literally using them to take this very flavorful, fiberful food.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So I'm glad that I wanted to make sure that it's nice to have those hard stops. But it's kind of like a standard, right? Like it's a standard that you're trying to achieve. And then like it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be cookie cutter, but you're equipped with the tools to kind of get into that gray area as you feel comfortable. So if it's,
and I love that. I love the language choices here too, I have to say, because it is, let's face it, I mean, the way that we talk about our food affects the relationship we have with our food. And I'm learning so much about that from you guys, just about how important that is, but also learning to kind of transform that, just not saying that there are foods that like you can't have, right? Because when we feel like limited like that, then we're more likely to start not making good choices and then feeling bad about it. It's that whole ugly cycle, right? So I love the way that you talk about that. I love that there are these like, hard stops to include it in the all the time food, right? But then there's that gray area, and there are foods that you can still have as treats, and it gives you permission to be a human. And I think that's so important.
Right. And this is real food. Like there's nothing extra special diet about this. Real food. It tastes good. It makes you feel good. It fills you. It makes you feel satisfied.
Just say like it's got to be really filling and fresh.
Pizza and chicken wings.
Right.
Like we have pizza, chicken wings.
Yummy.
Those are foods that we love to have.
Right.
We don't have them all the time.
Right.
Majority of our food that we consume as us is very exactly following the guidelines that we would. We would never tell people that you should do this thing if we were not going to do it.
If you're not going to do it. I love that. Yeah. And I bet too, I'm thinking about this, the lazy Cowgirl Caviar, and thinking, it makes a lot, right? So it's going to last for a while, right? You get a few meals out of it. It's not terribly expensive to put together. It seems super flavorful, super fresh. And I bet it probably gets better each day as it's like
it sort of soaks in.
Yeah. Yummy.
On how less lazy compared to me you'd like to be. The flavors could be, very diverse and just really lots of depth of flavor if you wanted to do more than just salad dressing.
Yeah, if you made your own dressing for this, like you can have lots more spices.
You could customize it, right? Yeah.
You could add in other beans if you wanted, like whatever you like.
Yeah.
Even with the dressing that we chose, you can still add spices and herbs. None of those things, spices, herbs, will add any of the things that we talked about.
Right.
It's not going to change anything about that.
Right. If it's a fresh or a dried like spice or herb, you're good. You're good.
It's only adding flavor. And when you mix it into something that's partially warm, you're going to probably release more of the flavors out of those things. Like we had to heat up the black beans to be able, or not black beans, sorry, the black-eyed peas to be able to use them in the recipe. If we had added any spices or herbs to that, it'd be the flavor would explode.
Right.
Yeah.
Off the charts.
Really fragrant.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna give whiplash unless you had something that you wanted to say.
Oh, I know. I just really quick. I was thinking I was trying to think of my favorite recipe that you guys have done for us as a food demo. And that's really, really hard because even like pre-COVID when we were able to do it in the office, I miss those days so much. But like the fajitas where you did them like on the cooktop, those were so stinking delicious. And that lazy lasagna dish was so good. Like it's so hard to pick. But since COVID and since we've been doing them online, I think my favorite has been the really fudgy, fiber-rich brownies you did with the black beans, right?
They're so good.
Oh gosh, yeah, past like the quesadillas. That's right, they were so good. No, but those black bean brownies were like seriously my favorite. They're so good. My kid was like, "Wait, there's black beans in these? Like, what? It's crazy." But this might be it now. This might have just jumped frog the whole.
It's taking the place.
It's taking the place.
It pulled into first. I love that.
I love it. I love it. It's so good. Thank you.
That's good. I'm living in I'm living like my brain right now is just thinking about like the application of this and like the potential grayness of it, where it's nice to have the standards, but maybe something isn't exactly fitting the standards. Like, what do you do? It's a conundrum. I've talked to people before who really have a lot of security around having those numbers and just always sticking to those numbers. And if they feel like it's too strict, it's not there's no fudge room, and so they start to eliminate foods that they can have and enjoy. And I don't want to do that to anybody, right? Like I don't want to create this weird scenario, right, where they feel like they can't have something because it's not meeting those limits. And so if you want to apply some of this to like your own food making, purchasing decisions and food choices, just give it time. Like what I usually tell people is just give it time. Like if you want to incorporate a low sodium canned food, or you want to start having blue chips, or this is just a good example, but it doesn't exactly meet the criteria, depending on kind of what your health goals are, you can just monitor things, like just go for it, monitor it over time. So if you're trying to maintain weight, or if you're keeping an eye on your blood pressure, we won't get too many examples so we don't get over ourselves. Incorporate it. Keep checking your blood pressure. You start to notice that it's ticking up, like maybe we should scale back on something that's got sodium in it. If it's not changing at all and you feel good and you really enjoy the food that you're eating, keep going. Like just keep doing it, keep eating it and enjoying it. And so that's sort of, that's my real world application of how to address the gray area. You don't have to like let that decision process stop in the store. If you feel like a food doesn't fit exactly, experiment with it, see what happens, see if anything changes. You might be surprised. So
I love that. I love that. I keep thinking about too, talking about like sodium and stuff. There's, and I think a lot of people miss this, but I know that in the breast cancer world, those of us that have lymphedema, there is a connection between high sodium intake and lymphedema that's not well controlled, right? And because it's that like holding of fluids, and it just makes the tissue expand and stuff. And so it's interesting to have like more low sodium options and to see how you can still, where the guidelines are, like where that kind of hard stop thing is, where the gray areas are, but then also strategies for, keeping it easy, but still being able to minimize that, the extra sodium.
The 140 is a good strict guideline. I think that's a pretty hard, it's a hard standard to stick to, which is like, it's good, right, to have that as something.
It makes the so specifically that is the USDA line to make something low sodium.
Right.
So even if it doesn't say low sodium on the food, if it's not on the label, if it's less than 140 or in the package per serving, then it qualifies as a low sodium food.
Right.
And so really, if you ate that way through the entire day, you're probably not going to hit 2,000 milligrams of sodium in your day.
Right. You won't overeat the amount of sodium that you need.
And Pat was mentioning too, like blood pressure meds do that too, with like have that effect with the sodium and stuff. So that's really good stuff to know.
Yeah, totally. Well, Pat's been awesome. She's been
I'm so glad to see you in here, Pat. I'm glad you joined us live. We've had some others popping in and go, but Pat hung out with us the whole time. I love it. I love it.
Do it all in person again.
Yeah, one day we'll do it. I'll tell you, I'm smelling a lot of the onion. I smell a lot of red onion.
We either need smell-o-vision or we need to find a new office and get back to in person. Miss that so much.
Maybe it'll be around the corner and we'll be able to do this in person again soon.
Wouldn't that be great? Indeed. Look, I'm saying we did a lot of talking about Publix in here. I think they should probably want to do some kind of sponsorship of this amazing work that we're all doing here. Might have to give them a phone call.
Yeah, I wouldn't say no. In the meantime, right, sponsorships aside, I feel totally comfortable if I find something that I like, just totally going for it and plugging it. So
absolutely.
None of this is sponsored, so we definitely
nobody's making any money from the content of any of this, but I mean that's what we do here, right? We're sharing all that information. This is where you can find this stuff. This is why, and it's all super important. Gosh, thank you guys so much for another great live stream session. I don't want to cut you guys short. Was there anything? I feel like we've covered so much.
I feel like we did. Yeah, I feel like we covered a lot. I feel like I got all the things that I wanted to make sure. There is a lot of stuff on the food label that we didn't cover today, right? We just talked about the nutrition facts panel,
that square, which is above the ingredients,
which is all numbers, right? So there's lots of information that you can kind of glean from the front of the label on your package. There is an entire ingredients list below that could have some attention, and we didn't focus on any of that stuff today because it can be overwhelming. So we did that intentionally. But if anybody has questions about that, I mean, like send them. We're happy.
Yeah, pop them in the comments or for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
For
totally.
sure. Plus, we have who knows how many more of these to keep doing and keep finding and learning. So, right? We've got a lot of learning left to do.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
We can always
Well,
do other label things.
Yeah, we'll figure out all the video things before the next time. New place.
Awesome.
These annoying light flares, this annoys me.
Okay.
This is not bothering any of us. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess my final take home message is that I want that label to be a tool, right, to help with food choices and decision-making processes. So hopefully sharing that information has made that a little bit easier for folks. And it just takes practice, and it kind of narrows the focus while you're in the grocery store looking at new things. So I'd be interested to hear if anybody has a chance to try it out. And if they pick up something that they decide to put back, or if they pick up something that they know that they can do more often, or whatever the case may be. So that's really exciting. Yeah.
So seriously, all you guys that are going to be watching this video later on, come back to it and put in the comments what your experiences are. And if you go out and you have, made the choices like Susannah was saying and decided not to get something you usually get because of something you saw on the label, let us know. Let's share all this with everybody. It's super awesome. Great.
Yeah, go back and check out some of the other videos so you can find that recipe that Kara loves, the black bean brown.
Yes, it's on our YouTube channel, or you can find it on the videos, the saved videos in our Facebook for sure. And we've got all of your sites and stuff too, right?
True, it's all on there too, but unrelated. Happy birthday, Kara. I know it was recently. Happy birthday.
Happy
You
birthday.
had such a wonderful birthday. Hope it was awesome and amazing. It's all wonderful. Thanks for everything that you do for the breast cancer patients in and around the area.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, I love you guys. You're so wonderful. That's awesome. Okay, so listen, we'll see you guys again next month, and go off and enjoy the beautiful new home and new babies and everything. And we'll see you soon.
We will see you guys soon.
Awesome. Thanks for being great. Bye.